Hi everyone, welcome to this week. We're going to be looking at the gerundive, or the future passive participle. I'll talk a little bit about those terms when we get to it. So we're going to look at gerunds as a review, and then gerundives. All right, so we looked at gerunds last week, right? Remember that the gerund is a verbal noun. And if you remember in Latin, it's characterized by that nd, right? So the undi, undo, undum, undo. All right. And so here is our gerund, right? We're not at the new stuff yet. Conjugated out, and here is gerund for the other conjugations and some irregular verbs. So make sure to know that. That's kind of the base. All right, so here's our future passive participle, also known as the gerundive. So you can see that it uses the nd, just like the gerund does, but as a participle, it's of course going to be an adjective rather than a noun. And as an adjective, it needs all genders, all numbers, all cases, unlike the gerund, which is a noun. So the future passive participle is your 2-1-2 adjective, osaum, and it uses just your straight 2-1-2 endings. No real change there. And again, nd stem. All right, and here's what it looks like for all the other conjugations and irregular verbs. So again, you can see the nd running throughout. All right, so in Latin, the gerund, wrong color, sorry about that. The gerund and the gerundive overlap. And the gerundive, of course, this is also the future passive participle. All right, I tend to avoid the term gerundive because students ignore the iv and just think that it is a gerund or the same as the gerund, which it is not. So I call it the future passive participle, just to make sure that we remember that it is a participle. Your book and other teachers will call it a gerundive or might call it a gerundive, so you should just know that the gerundive and the future passive participle are the same. But as I said, I find the use of the term gerundive confusing, and so I tend to avoid it. Partly because in Latin, as you might remember, the gerund is translated with that ing form. The future passive participle is not at all translated with that ing form. So it uses about to be or must verbed, about to be verbed, must be verbed, something like that. It basically shows obligation or necessity. All right, and there are instances when it will overlap in terms of usage with the gerund. That's where the term gerundive comes from. But again, I tend to find that term more trouble than it's worth. All right. Further complicating things is that the ing form in English is also the translation of the present active participle, right? So the running man, that's our present active participle, versus running is fun, that's our gerund. So those are just things that you sort of have to keep track of. Remember, the gerund is a noun, and so can't agree with anything. The present active participle, which is the other ing form, as a participle, has to agree with something. And the future passive participle, as a participle, has to agree with something. So when that nd form is isolated, not agreeing with anything, then it's going to be your gerund. When that nd form is agreeing with something, that's going to be your future participle. All right. Okay. So here's what we talked about, right? Showing obligation or necessity. All right. And that's our must, that's our about to be, etc. Where the gerundive term comes from is this number 2 here. So when the gerund takes a direct object, right? Like seeing the man was awesome, or seeing the movie star was awesome. Seeing the action is the noun. Movie star is the direct object of that noun, that verbal noun. So when that happens, Latin, for whatever reason, will use the gerundive, or the future passive participle, modifying that object instead of the gerund. All right, so if we look down here, all right, so there's our future passive participle, that nd, it is agreeing with that noun, but it's translated as a gerund with a direct object. All right, not exactly sure why Latin decided to do that, but they did. Oh, and you can tell the future passive participle because it will use endings that the gerund does not. Remember, the gerund only uses the I ending, the O ending, and the UM ending. So if an nd form has any ending other than those, it's automatically going to be a future passive participle. So with this as ending, just get rid of it, clean it up. But with that as ending, that's automatically going to be a future passive participle by virtue of the fact that there can't be a gerund ending. All right, and so here's a nice little chart, all right, that shows that shift. All right, so this is the gerund with an accusative direct object. All right, Latin tends to avoid that, but every now and then you'll see it. And this is, as you can see up here, the preferred way, the gerundive or the future passive participle agreeing with the noun, even though it ends up being translated the same. All right, again, the ablative, gerund, direct object, future past participle, agreeing with the noun. All right, and it goes through from there. All right, so let's take a look. So this must be feared, all right? This is what's called the passive paraphrastic. You don't necessarily need to know that term, but it's useful, just if you hear it otherwise. And it's basically the future passive participle plus a form of the verb to be. Technically, any future passive participle is going to have that obligation or necessity, but this is when it is a main verb. All right. As with all participles, it has to agree with the subject. So the subject there, masculine and singular. All right, masculine, singular, singular. So that looks good. Let's confirm the others. So no main verb, not nominative. All right, works, but feminine instead of masculine. So A is correct. All right, so by flying, this is our straight gerund. All right, so verbal noun on its own, not modifying anything, that's going to be our gerund. And of course with a by, that's going to be ablative. So not ablative. Looks good, let's check. Infinitive, so verbal noun in the nominative or accusative. All right, gerund in the accusative, so B. All right, and I'll leave the rest to you. All right, more of the same. All right, here come the answers if you want to pause or go back. And there you go. All right, for you Harry Potter fans out there, there is a future passive participle in the Hogwarts crest. All right, so a sleeping, let me do this quickly. So a sleeping dragon, right, must never be disturbed. All right, and so the ND, the future past participle, that passive paraphrastic, is where that must comes from versus, isn't disturbed. That would be our regular old verb. All right, so a sleeping dragon must, that's the ND, never be disturbed. All right, here's a text from Plautus, all right, whom we've talked about, a Roman comic playwright. All right, so there are two gerundives. All right, did you find them? So, anerandum, auscultandum. All right, so what do they modify? All right, so, wrong color, sorry about that. Argumentum. All right. How are they used? They're used to express purpose. That's what odd does. Excuse me. All right, so it is a pleasure to me to narrate anerandum. All right, this introduction. If it will be your pleasure to listen to it, understood, to this introduction, understood. All right, here's another gerundive, future passive participle text. So what is the gerundive? See if you can find it. All right, Lawanda. What does it modify? All right, it's going to modify membra. And then translate. All right, so it was summer. Istis erat or erat istis. All right. And the day had passed the middle of the day, right? The middle hour. All right. I put my limbs, my body, all right, in the middle of a couch or bed, something like that. All right, but I put my limbs that needed to be lightened, that needed to be relaxed in the middle of the couch. All right, and that needed to be, right? That's what that ND does. That must be relaxed. It needed to be relaxed. That's that ND versus another participle. All right, here's another gerundive text. So we're just translating here. So I read your book, and all right, I notated it as diligently as I could. All right, I notated what I thought had to be changed, needed to be changed, and what I thought needed to be removed. All right? And so again, that ND is what gives us that needed to be. All right? So I read your book, and as diligently as I could, I noted what had to be changed, what I thought had to be changed, what I thought had to be removed. All right, and here's another. So there are 4 gerundives. All right, so they all have the same ending. 2 are gerunds, 2 are gerundives. All right, so laudandi, probandi, scribendi, recitandi. So which 2 are gerundives or future past participles? Which 2 are gerunds? All right, so these first 2, because they're going with the verb to be, these are going to be the gerundives or the future past participles. That's going to be the passive paraphrastic. These next 2, scribendi, recitandi, these are going to be genitives with that studio. All right, so because of a love of writing and reciting, right? Because of a love of the act of writing and reciting. And this top one, they must be praised, they must be approved. All right, let's take a look at negatives. So you're translating. All right, there we go. So, apud helvetios longe nobilissimus fuit et ditissimus orgeterix. All right, is sala pisone consulibus regni cupiditate inductus coniurationem nobilitatis fecit. All right, et civitate persuasit ut de finibus suis cum omnibus copiis exerent. All right, so in the home of the Helvetii, in the land of the Helvetii, by far the most noble and the wealthiest was Orgeterix. This guy, when M. Messala and M. Piso were consuls, because of a desire for power, all right, or I should say, motivated by a desire for power, made a conspiracy of the nobles and persuaded the state to leave from their borders with all their stuff. All right, I'll let you take there. All right, and this, of course, is English to Latin. So they kept asking, that's going to be our imperfect. Rogabant, quis, novus, rex, esset. And you need that subjunctive because of indirect question. All right, so who was the new king? Direct question. They kept asking who the new king was. Indirect question. So there's my who. Because it's an indirect question, there's my subjunctive verb. Did you fear, metuisti, that the Senate would make peace? So senatus cum hoste pacem faceret. All right, and I suppose metuiste nay. All right, so that's our fearing clause. All right. Oh, sorry. That should be nay instead of but. All right. So remember that the what looks like the positive in English actually uses nay in the Latin. All right, but there's a subjunctive. And I will leave the rest to you. That is it for this week. Please email me if you have any questions, and I'll be here next week. Thanks.